Good afternoon and welcome to Miss Dawn's Justice. I'm so happy you're here with us. And with me today is a very good friend of mine, Gwen Lewis Esquire. We've been friends for, many years. I won't say how many because I don't want to date us, okay? Just know that we're seasoned professionals, all right? And both of us have ESQ behind our names. What does that mean? It means we're licensed to practice law. And today we're going to talk about a very, very sensitive matter, very important matter, child neglect and abuse. Now, while our focus is the District of Columbia, we welcome listeners from all over the country and particularly here in the DMV, District, Maryland, and Virginia to listen in because some things are, well, they have elements in common. But we're going to focus on the process that takes place in the District of Columbia. I think I've told some of you in past shows you've seen me on that I stayed on the neglect and abuse calendar in DC for almost a decade. Well, that was a little while ago, but Ms. Lewis here has done it more recently. And between the two of us, we have experienced some rather horrific matters. We're talking about this today with a backdrop of juvenile crime and the increase in juvenile crime. Juveniles are both perpetrators and victims. Just this week, we've had more juvenile crime. Victims, 8-year-old child walking in an area in Brightwood. Yes, I said Brightwood. That's upper Northwest, where most people think things like that don't happen. And we had a 3-year-old child killed in Dumfries, Virginia, just yesterday or day before yesterday. And they have already, thank goodness, captured someone who may be the perpetrator. Now, the victims there were all children, 17 and younger. And the perpetrator himself was only 20 years old. Something is very wrong. Something is very wrong where we have so many offenders and victims 25 years old and less. But before I get started, I want to say thank you because when we say thank you, we demonstrate an attitude of gratitude. And to get to this point today, I need to thank some very, very important people. And at the top of that list, I must thank Miss Rose Brown. You know her as Black Rose Garden. And I thank you, Rose. I hope you're listening. If you're not, just know I'm sending out a big thank you to you and all the assistance you give me, even with this program, Miss Dawn's Justice. The other people I'd like to thank in the community, I'd like to send out a thank you to my good friend Sharon Wise with Wise Works, House of Sharon, and her son, Teddy, with Just Swag TV. They helped me in the creation of the logo you see at the beginning of the show. When you see the pearls, you know it's Miss Dawn's Justice, the signature pearls. And today I'm wearing pearls that my parents gave me for my 60th birthday. I just thought today would be special. They're not here anymore physically, but I feel their presence and I'm grateful. I want to thank my family. They have been so supportive in all my efforts. You know, I'm a little controversial and they know that, but they try to get people prepared for the controversy. They said, it's just Dawn. Okay, deal with it. So, in the community, I want to thank the Davis brothers at the Davis Barbershop. Phil Pennell, who's been the longtime executive director at Anacostia Coordinating Council, uh, and Sammy Whiting Ellis, longtime friend out of Houston, who lives in Ward 3. I thank you, Sammy, for your support and prayers. And today I want to send a special shout out to two people who have helped and encouraged me with prayers and positive affirmations. And that would be Dr. Laverne Adams and Jackie Ward and Carlene Armstead, known as Kay. Thank you so much. Now, someone who stepped up to help us and sponsor this program, I got a little emotional there because it's just so wonderful that so many people have come out, and that's Anthony McDuffie. Anthony is the owner of a real estate investment company called Real Estate Wealth Investors, and he is located in Ward 8. In Ward 8. And you can give him a call at 202 491 0404. He's located right there on the corner of King Avenue and Talbot Street. Anthony is doing great work in the real estate investment industry. He's a broker now in the district. Congratulations, Anthony. Keep up the good work. And he's doing some education in real estate investment. I think every Tuesday around 7 o'clock, he does a teaching. So give him a call and ask how you can become involved in that. He doesn't just list and sell property. He does way more than that. And he helps people get financing. So Anthony, thank you so much for stepping up in a very meaningful way in sponsoring this segment of the program. Thank you. Today, I wanted to start out by saying that I thank all of you who helped us in the political campaign in the District of Columbia. The votes have all counted. People have been sworn in, and I promised you that when people got sworn in, the countdown would start on what? Keeping people accountable. Keeping people accountable. Now, Mr. Mendelson made committee assignments. Okay, you know, when you hear that voice shift like that, you know I'm getting ready to get down on Mr. Mendelson. Now, there were 12 committees. We only have 10 now. Some were consolidated. I looked at the new assignments, and frankly, I am more baffled than ever about those committee assignments. The judiciary now is, I'm grateful that a lawyer is now the head of the Judiciary Committee. It was Mr. Allen. Unfortunately, he's still on the committee, but I think the strong chairperson, Brooke Pinto, will keep that committee focused and introduce the changes needed so that it can function and do proper oversight over all the agencies that come under that committee. I think she's strong. She was a tax attorney when she was at the Office of the Attorney General. She's done many wonderful things, and she's strong and very approachable to people. And I appreciate her because through the redistricting process, she attended literally or virtually every redistricting panel meeting, not just her own. I really like that. And she asked very good questions. So I'm looking forward to Brooke Pinto being a really good chairperson for the Judiciary Committee. Now, you know, just before the election, housing became an issue. HUD issued that scathing report on housing. Ms. Bonds was the chairperson. She is no longer. Now we have Robert White as the chairperson of that committee. And Mr. White is an at-large council member. But I'm a little concerned about the makeup of the committee because Mr. Fruman, Ward 3, Mr. Parker, Ward 5, Ms. Pinto is Ward 2. Mr. McDuffie is at large now, but he lives in Ward 5. Now, what bothers me about that is there's nobody on the housing committee from east of the river. That's where we live, right?
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I don't feel that it's really going to do the Ward 8 and Ward 7 any justice not to have people on committees that are really important to our area. I mean, housing is a problem. Poverty is a problem.
Yeah.
In our wards.
And here we have, look, I believe Robert White is in Ward 4. I know it's an uptown ward. He's not east of the river. Let's put it that way. Fruman is Ward 3, Parker's 5, Pinto's 2. 3 and 2 are two of the most affluent wards in the city. McDuffie is in Ward 5. So that's two people from Ward 5 on the Housing Committee. I know he's at large now. Please don't write in and tell me I know it better than most people. He's at large, but he lives in 5. And let's face it, where you live is important. Okay, so now just don't go there with Miss Don. Okay, now. Business and Economic Development, Mr. McDuffie is still the chairperson. Mr. Allen is Ward 6. Miss Bonds, I think Miss Bonds lives in 5. She's at large, but she lives in 5, I think. Pinto 2. Gray is 7. Well, thank goodness. Business and Economic Development will have Mr. Gray from east of the river. Now there's a question. He's going through his own personal battle. He's being questioned about his health, and whether he's able to do. And they took the health committee from him and gave him a newly formed committee that has to do with the hospital and health equity. So I think he's trying to challenge that reassignment, but we'll see. The health committee is being chaired by Christine Henderson, who's an independent at-large person. And on that committee, we have Allen. Mr. Gray is still on the committee, thank goodness. Nadeau from Ward 1 and Parker from Ward 5. Other than Mr. Gray, Mr. Trayon White is not on this committee. Mr. Trayon White is on the Hospital and Health Equity Committee, chaired by Mr. Gray. So that gives us 2 people from east of the river on that committee. But then the Ward 3 person, Fruman, at-large Henderson, who's the chairperson of health. That makes sense for those 2, Henderson and Gray, to be on both those committees. That makes sense. And Parker from 5. I'm just a little concerned that we don't have good representation on some of these really important committees. I'm looking at the Transportation Committee. Well, the Transportation Committee is chaired by Allen, who's Ward 6, Capitol Hill. Fruman, who took the place of Mary Che, who was the chair of that committee. And Henderson at large. Jaleese George is Ward 4 and Parker is Ward 5. Well, transportation in the east of the river. Could you please tell me what you think of that? I know you really have some concerns.
I can remember when you could get on a bus and go all the way downtown. Mm-hmm. Now, for the most part, you get on a bus and you go to the metro station. You get from the metro station, you get another bus and you go downtown. So transportation has always been an issue
for us.
And then you have the violence on the bus, violence in the metro station.
Yeah, we've had
a lot of concerns.
Yeah, and at that Anacostia station and the Congress Heights stations, we've had quite a bit of crime.
And yes, we have just in recent in Congress Heights, we had shooting.
Yeah, was that person killed?
Yes.
And then at the Anacostia station, we've had a number of people assaulted over there. And is there parking at either of those stations?
There's parking at both stations. It may not be adequate for all intents and purposes, but there's parking.
Is it well lit, or you've used the parking?
Right. I don't hang out at either place. Okay. I'm not willing to do that.
But you have.
I have in the past.
Yes. In the past, yeah. And so it seems then that those of us east of the river are still challenged with transportation issues. The Transportation Committee is also the Environment Committee. I find this a bit insulting because it's as if we're not interested in environmental issues.
Right.
So don't we have environmental issues?
We do. I've observed the trash collector picking up the trash and the recycling, putting it in the same truck.
Oh.
So we do have issues.
Yeah. And I have received very specific instructions about how to do my recycling and how to do my trash. And I have received communications from the district government, sometimes with bold print, you will be fined if you don't obey the rules. So, I'm really insulted that nobody from east of the river is on that committee. I'm just very troubled by that. And this is not a new thing. This is once again being cut out of something I think is very important. Now, our own council member is still the chairperson for recreation, libraries, and youth affairs. Now, on his committee, he has Anita Bonds at large, McDuffie at large, Nadeau Ward 1, and Robert White, who is at large uptown. So everybody's uptown except the chair on this, and on the other side of the river. I'm still not happy with this, Gwen. I'm just really not. And then the area that we're talking about today with child abuse and neglect, the committee that's overseeing that is chaired by Janice Lewis George. Now, she's a real hard worker. She's in Ward 4. She's the Ward 4 council person. But I looked at the committee. She's Ward 4. Mr. Fruman is on that committee, Ward 3. Nadeau, Ward 1. Zach Parker, Ward 5. And Robert White, also on the other side of the river. Now, this is real. You probably see the steam coming out of my ears. Because, look, Committee on Facilities and Family Services. I'm all right with the chairperson. She just had something happen in her ward. The little 8-year-old boy that was in Ward 4 in Brightwood. People don't think of Brightwood as a high crime area, but she has some real issues up there in Petworth and Brightwood and Manor Park and Shepherd Park. They've had an increase in crime like everywhere else in the city. So, but I'm looking at the makeup of the committee, and there's nobody from east of the river. And when I look at the agencies under the committee, the agencies over which this committee would have oversight. Now, remember, we talked about the importance of doing diligence and oversight. Remember that? And here we have the Advisory Committee on Child Abuse and Neglect, Child and Family Services Agency, which I know you're going to talk about extensively today, the Commission on Persons with Disabilities. Watch this, the Commission on Poverty. What's the poorest ward in the city?
Definitely Ward 8.
Ward 8, east of the river, right. And then we have this odd mix of things, Department of Buildings, Department of General Services, and then we have Department of Disabilities, State Planning Council, and the Office for the Deaf and Blind, Office of Disability Rights, and the Office of Ombudsman for Children, State Rehabilitation Council, and the Statewide Independent Living Council. Look, what ward has more children?
Are you asking me that seriously?
I'm trying to be kind.
Okay. There are more children east of the river than anywhere else in the city.
Yeah. And what's really so sad about that, not only do we have more children, and people are having babies at a higher rate east of the river, and we had nowhere over there to deliver a baby. That's why we're working very hard to deal with the hospital situation. Okay. For a while, Ward 8 maternity cases had to go to Providence Hospital. That closed. Places where you can have a baby in the city are very limited. Okay. So here I'm looking at a committee then chaired by a Ward 4 council person, which I think she's going to do a great job. But I'm looking at the other members, and they're nice people. Now, remember, people, Miss Don's not attacking them personally. I'm just saying they're not, well, none of them are from east of the river. That's all I'm saying. And I just have to wonder what's in the head of the chairperson when he makes these assignments. That's not a personal attack. You know, I'm just raising a legitimate question about how the chairperson could make appointments on this important committee. We're having all these issues with children in our community across the city, but in particular east of the river. And not one person on this committee. And see, I'm doing this for the people in DC because this is the part you don't do. You just recognize Mr. Mendelson is the chairperson, and you may know some of these people by name, and you may like them, and that's a good thing. But look at the structure of this committee, people. Anybody east of the river should be highly insulted looking at this because so much of this impacts on us in a negative way. Okay, so having said that, let me tell you what we're going to do in the next few weeks. Now, next week, we are going to be talking about two things in particular. We're starting out with the family law module, and that will include, things like custody, divorce, legal separations, that kind of thing. Okay, paternity. Now, next week, we're going to start out with a topic that you don't hear folks talking about a lot, but people have real misconceptions about, and that is common law marriage. Yes, the District of Columbia has common law marriage. It is a valid marriage. I want you to tune in. Make sure you tell everybody. Let's get the real fact about common law marriage and whether it's a legitimate marriage. Yes, it is in the District of Columbia. So we'll talk about that, and we're going to talk about something else. Some people think prenuptial agreements are only for rich people. No, they're for smart people. They are for smart people. So tune in next week for that, okay? And I hope you'll be back with me next week. I'll have to say that Gwen's been with me through thick and thin on seminars that we do throughout the city. We do them typically in June for World Elder Abuse Awareness Month, the whole month, and it's all over the world. The official color is purple. Keep in mind that that is World Elder Abuse Awareness Month for the whole month of June. The official day is June 15th. All right. Now, in April, we'll be looking to you to help us with child abuse awareness and prevention. And that's in April, and the color is blue. The official color is blue. And I'm throwing this out here because many of us, and we're both people of faith, you work in your churches and you need to address some of these issues. I like music just like everybody else, but you know what? We do a lot of sing-offs and not enough information. No, okay. And before some of you preachers out there get mad, I'm licensed and ordained. Okay, so I'm not talking about what I read in a book or saw on TV. I've lived this my whole life, okay? My mother went into labor with me sitting on an organ stool. So when you say you're born in the church, I was almost, okay. I just wanted to inject a little humor there, but don't call me talking about, no, the churches have failed. The topic we're going to talk about today, child abuse, child neglect, the churches have failed. And since I'm a part of it, I can say it, okay? I can say it. We have not done our job. We have slipped into being entertainers, even in the services, okay? we slip into entertainment mode, and we need to go back to something we've done historically, and that is keep people informed. That was a big part of our churches historically. Why do you think so many of the historically Black colleges are related or have some kind of relationship to churches? Huh? That's not an accident. So let's get busy. Go to the pastor. If you really want me to give them a call or something and ask them if they want to host a seminar, we'd be glad to come. We don't charge for the seminars at the churches. We don't. We don't do it. We only ask that you provide uh, refreshments, and that's not asking too much. Okay. Now, it's free when you listen to us on the radio, or and it's free while you watch us on this broadcast, and it's free at those community events. But now, when you come to the office, it's not free. Let's be clear. You heard it here. Okay. So, bless you. God bless you. All right. So, we want the community and the organizations, nonprofit organizations. Look, we've slipped into entertainment mode. Now, nobody likes to get out there and shake a tail feather any more than some of us, but we need to provide information to people. How are we going to change what's happening to our young people if we don't get busy and get serious here? I'm sorry. Okay. It and see, we had churches leave the city too. This is another thing. They were anchors in the community. And we've had so many leave the city. And I'm not fussing with you, but I'm just saying that when you did that, it left a void, and we don't have that anchor anymore. And I mean, some major churches left the city, people who were doing things in the community. And what replaced them did not work the same way. In the process of gentrification, we lost a lot of churches to the outer areas. And so, we're looking at you to pick up the cross, or pick up whatever it is, and do the work that we're supposed to do as people of faith. Okay, so I can say that because I do belong to the faith community. And I forgot to say something about Reverend Motley. Reverend Motley, thank you, because you and Miss Seegers and some other people have really been faithful with the First Fridays and the East of the River Consortium, Public Safety Consortium, and I think we have something on tomorrow. So thank you, Reverend Motley, because you've been extraordinary in demonstrating that activism in the faith community. Well, this committee that's chaired by Ms. George oversees the Child and Family Services Agency. And I know that you have particularly worked on that calendar since I have, in a more recent time. I suspect a lot of things are still pretty much the same. I know we have different kinds of abuse, and I know you've worked with children. I had cases with sexual abuse of children, neglect where the children were, and what by the way is, we call it child abuse and neglect. What's neglect?
Right. There's neglect is when things are withheld because of circumstances. It's not intentional. Circumstances might be that the parent or the caretaker has a substance abuse problem. I don't think being trifling is a circumstance, but sometimes that's the case.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it real.
Abuse, on the other hand, is intentional harm that's done to a child.
So I think I'm hearing there with neglect, then lack of funds would not automatically be neglect. And I want people to hear that, because both of us have been school teachers. And I was a school teacher in an affluent area of Prince George's County. And the children there, I did encounter cases of neglect. And some of these children lived in homes that had swimming pools, but they were neglected.
They were neglected because the parents were working all the time
Mhm.
and did not take time to see about their children.
Right.
That's where the trifling part comes in.
Yeah.
So that is a circumstance that can cause a child to be neglected.
And now, can neglect rise to a level where children could be removed from the home? Just neglect without,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And then neglect then is a special form
Of abuse.
of abuse.
Yes.
Okay, I see. I see. So, what if I just leave them in the morning and don't make plans for how they get to school and that kind of thing, or don't make plans for their food, or what,
All of that is neglect.
that's neglect.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how is that dealt with? How do we deal with people who are neglectful? Just they're neglectful. They don't hit the children or anything like that, but they're neglectful. What do we do there?
But someone wants to observe that and report the neglect.
Mm.
They see a child that's dirty.
Mm-hmm.
They see a child that's asking for food.
Mm.
They don't have to have proof, but they can call a hotline
Mhm.
and report that.
Mm-hmm. Do they have to give a name or anything?
They don't have to give anything. They can report it anonymously. Just give the address, whatever information they know about the location of the child,
Wow.
and that should be followed up on by social services.
Okay. So, when I call that line, will I get a number or some kind of reference number? How does that work?
I can give you the hotline number.
Oh, great. Okay,
Okay.
folks, get your pencils and papers. A hotline number to report this neglect we're talking
And
about.
this is for Washington, D.C.
It's for DC.
Abuse and Neglect Hotline.
Mm-hmm.
It's 202
Mhm.
671 7233.
All right. And
And
it's 24 hours?
yes, someone will take your information. From my experience, I had to follow up myself,
Wow.
and wasn't always happy with the outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there are systemic problems that I believe the agencies have dealt with in the light of some horrific cases.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and we've had some. Now, when you said you followed up yourself, what was your title in that role? I want people to understand.
I was just a citizen.
You were.
I was just a citizen.
Okay.
I wasn't doing anything official.
Okay. You used the magic word report. Report. Who's responsible to report in the District of Columbia?
In the District of Columbia, there's a list of mandatory reporters,
Mm-hmm.
Teachers, people working with children, dentists, child care workers, chiropractors, nurses, mental health professionals. The thing that surprised me when I was looking into this is that clergy in the District of Columbia are not mandatory reporters.
I know that, and it's a pet peeve. It's a really serious point of irritation for me, because clergy work with children, right? And they should be required. Now, I'm from West Virginia.
Mhm.
West Virginia, guess who's mandated in West Virginia?
Clergy. Mandated. Right?
Yeah, clergy. Now, you all heard it from me. I'm just a little old country bumpkin up here in the big city and you all in the big city don't have the clergy as mandated reporters, and us down in Appalachia. West Virginia is the only state totally in Appalachia. Clergy are mandated reporters. Okay. And with mandated reporters, how serious is that term, mandated reporter?
It's illegal for you not to report suspected abuse.
All right, say that again now.
It is illegal for you not to report suspected abuse.
So I cannot say to my dentist, or, let's say it's a dentist, I can't say, can you just give us one more chance?
No.
No.
Doesn't go like
Okay,
that.
people, do not ask a mandated reporter to give you another chance. If you think it's, no, the teacher must report it. The principal must report it. Now, we do have people who will,
Yeah, I'd had an experience. It was a child in my classroom that um, came to me, and she had been beaten. She had old bruises, fresh bruises. I went to report it
Mhm.
and was told, "Well, you don't know how she was before her stepfather came into that home. She was really bad before her stepfather came into the home."
So it sounds like, was that a person in authority?
That was the person in authority, the
Mhm.
mandatory reporter
Okay.
um,
In the school
in
system.
the school system where I was in another state.
Right. And okay, so it sounds like that person was trying to blame the child
Absolutely.
for the treatment he or she was receiving.
Absolutely.
Oh wow. And this is, folks, that's not a rare thing to happen. That happens, period. Okay? We have that, and that's the school system. Okay? Now, how would you uh, consider the school system's reporting? I mean, typically, how does it come to the attention of someone in the school system?
Observation
Mm-hmm.
is key.
Mm-hmm.
On the classroom level, on the playground, wherever it is,
Mm-hmm.
different signs that you see. A child comes to school and they're in the fifth grade and they've wet themselves.
Oh.
All kinds of things like that. Low self-esteem, a child that's already abusing alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
children that are aggressive even,
Mm-hmm.
suicidal, whatever you observe, it's a key or clue that something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take the attitude that it's not our business,
Mm-hmm.
whether we're mandatory reporters or not, in my opinion, we have a moral obligation to report it.
Yeah. Yeah. I recall seeing children who were very hungry at school. They got the breakfast and the lunch, and they were just ravenous.
Mhm.
Okay. And then I remember seeing, like you said, and keep in mind, my main assignment when I taught in PG County, I was in an affluent school. Okay. And they came with food stains on the
Uniform.
uniform.
Yeah.
They wore uniforms, people. And the whole point of having uniforms is so that, you have 5 shirts, or, or you have 5 pants or skirts. You see what I mean?
Mhm.
And maybe you don't have 5, but you wash out, one. I mean, old school. I'm going old school on you now. That's what they say. If you had 2, you wash one and you wear one. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And these kids came to school with food stains, the same food stains. And what I discovered was the parents wanting to maintain a certain image of a lifestyle
Mhm.
left early in the morning before the children went to the bus stop.
Were the children late? Were they absent?
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
signs.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And then when the parents came back in, because some of them worked 2 jobs to maintain the pool and whatever. And so the children really didn't see the parents until the weekend. And for all practical purposes. And some of them did very poorly in school. They fell asleep.
Mhm.
They
Another
were tired.
sign.
They were tired all the time, And and as you say, there was aggressive behavior sometimes, or lethargy, just didn't want to participate. And some of these kids had such promise, they were good kids, but neglected. And then I saw some that had the markings of being abused. So, what kinds of things can happen in the school to give them a little assistance? Do most schools have guidance counselors, or is there somebody in the school that can help?
Now, in my experience, again,
Oh, that's what we want to know.
these people exist.
Mm-hmm.
Guidance counselors exist.
Mm-hmm.
You have social workers.
Mm-hmm.
You even now have policemen
Mm-hmm.
and those who are working, moonlighting as school resource officers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's an individual decision on their parts whether they're going to do the jobs that are assigned to them.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have empathy? They have empathy for children who are not of their same color or background,
Oh dear.
or their
Well,
same economic status.
now there's another layer.
We
There's
have,
another layer.
yeah, we have studies where you find that the same behavior, and we know this is when people are adults,
Mhm.
that there's disparity in sentencing and things like that. But it starts in kindergarten.
Mm.
You know, the same behavior that's punishable by in a black child is not punishable in a white child.
Mm.
And you have when an explanation is given, say that the teacher is informed that the parents are having trouble, there's problems at home, depending on whether or not the educator is the same race or ethnicity of the child, that's what will make the difference.
Wow. So now I think you're talking about, let's take the expel situation.
Mhm.
So I've seen the studies right here in the district and in the DMV about the rate of expelling certain children
Mhm.
and even gender.
Mhm.
Black males are
Yes.
more likely to be expelled. I
Absolutely.
think.
That's true.
Is that
That's
true?
true.
Okay. Okay. Now just think about this, people. This starts early. Remember a few weeks ago when we talked about how people determine how many uh, private prisons to build?
Mhm.
They look to see how many young men of color are in the third grade. That's about 8 years old, if you will. And they extrapolate, I think that's the word, to see how many private prisons they will build. Okay? So everybody knows one of the big investments you can make is if you want to invest in private prisons. That's a huge, huge investment. So the pipeline to prison begins
Very early.
very early.
Very
The
early.
pipeline to prison is very early. So, okay, you know what I'm listening to, and you called out a number of things. Guess what we don't have a lot of now in the schools? Each school at one time, and I'm dating myself,
Mhm.
had one, and that was a school nurse.
That's true.
Now, one nurse services maybe 2 or 3 schools.
Yes.
Was that the case where you were, or you
Where-
know that it is
yeah.
now?
Yeah, I
you
know it is now. I
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
a lady that lives in Northeast who's a school nurse, and she goes to more than one school.
More than one school. And that's so tragic because let's take a child who's neglected. I remember, and I was in elementary school a long, long time ago. People, and my aunt Maddie happened to be one of the school nurses. Okay, because I was in a segregated elementary school, and they did remember the eye charts
Hmm.
and the hearing test.
I remember.
Remember that?
Mhm.
And that was a part of the elementary school checkup with the school nurse. So
Dentists would come
the
in.
dentist would come in.
Mhm.
Yeah. What happened?
I think we forgot. We forgot. We got so busy earning money and being somebody that we forgot about our children.
That's sad. That's very sad. So now we've had some horrible cases. You represented children in the CCAN program. Is that right? Okay. And what do they call the lawyer who's the representative of the children?
That's the guardian ad litem.
Okay. And in that process that we have in the District of Columbia, when you get into the court, I mean, you sign up and you're the guardian ad litem for the children, and you're empowered with certain responsibilities to perform.
Right. And you're also required to have training.
Exactly. Okay. And it's very rigorous training, isn't it?
Right. Because it's important that a person actually be qualified and able to deal with whatever the situation is.
And don't they vet the people for
Yes, they do.
Okay. All right. And in that process, are the parents represented?
Yes, they also can have an attorney or
Okay.
will have an attorney.
They will.
Yeah.
In that.
And the guardian ad litem has got to be a neutral.
Right. So, with respect to the guardian ad litem, when you go to court, are the children there?
Not necessarily. It depends on the case.
Okay. Okay. So, do you get a chance to interview the children?
Yes, you have to spend time with the children. You have to talk with them. And that reveals a lot about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So,
And you are advocating for them, for their best interest.
now, in your role as guardian ad litem, do you interact with the other lawyers, the parents' lawyers, and that kind of thing?
In the circumstances I was in, I've interviewed the parents myself, and had to document what I discovered from not only the children, but from the parents. Once it got into the courtroom, that was the only time where I actually had any discussions with the parents or with parents' lawyers other than scheduling type matters.
Well, based on your work and when you're sitting in the courtroom, and I mentioned this a week or so ago, remember those are closed proceedings.
Yes.
And really only lawyers and social workers and that and the parties
themselves
should be in the courtroom.
Right.
Okay. Now, do you write a report and make recommendations?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, where you get the most joy, even though there's a lot of emotion and feeling that goes into these things. When you have to put the facts out as the law applies, that's where you get your joy, because that's when you know that you can really make a difference.
Yes, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling. It's a tough thing because emotions are involved. And you know what I found, Gwen, and I'm sure you saw this, sometimes those children could be physically abused horribly, like a straightening comb burn, or I mean, you could just see it right on the child, or the bruises that you would see. And do you know, despite that treatment, I have seen this, people, the children cry uncontrollably when they realize they're going to be taken from the parent. Can you imagine? That is unconditional love.
That is love.
That is love.
That's love. If only the parents could display that kind of love back to the child, we wouldn't have these situations.
And after I don't know, I can remember after handling those cases, and they lasted most of the morning, like into the afternoon. I just couldn't do anything else that day.
Yes, it's draining, but it's also very satisfying.
Yeah. And it's very hard. In that process we're talking about, there's a government lawyer. Yes. And so at the table, there's the government lawyer. There's a social service person, I guess from Child Family Services, or a contractor for them, because they don't have enough workers to cover it. The problem is so bad, people. There are agencies who are contractors who fill in, and thank God for, like back in the day, it was Catholic Charities and so forth. And there are other organizations doing that investigative work. Now, is there an emergency kind of initial proceeding? What is the initial proceeding considered emergency, or is there some urgency there?
Again, there's circumstantial.
Okay.
When the children are in danger, some kind of immediate danger, then they may have to deal with social services and remove the children from the home for a time.
Okay.
Reunification is always the goal, but reunification does not always work out.
Well, and that was a problem I had because years ago, uh, reunification was an unrealistic goal for many children.
Mhm.
Particularly when I was on that calendar during the crack epidemic,
Mhm.
let's just face it, folks, when that was rough, okay? And so reunification was not a real goal, and the load was so heavy on the social workers. They try to work smart and have a template, to fill in the blanks.
Mhm.
And sometimes that stuff just got crossed up, and so I'm standing there with a little girl, and the report might say he. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it was just awful. No, we're bringing it to you real.
That's
We're
true.
bringing it to you real. Okay. I don't know another way. And at my age, I probably couldn't learn another way anyway, but I'm just being real and honest. It's a hard subject for us. And this thing about what happens in our house stays in our house, we can't deal with that. That's deadly. That is deadly. Please don't have that attitude. Okay. Now, it's very difficult, especially for other family members, to find themselves in a role of maybe having to testify. Did you run into that?
I didn't have to do that,
Okay.
but I did have a babysitter
Hmm.
that had to testify.
And I'm sure that was tough.
It was tough.
Hmm. 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 So, um, what do we need to do to do some preventive kinds of work? Do you have any?
Observation, reporting,
Hmm.
communication,
Hmm.
diligence.
Mhm.
Just stay on it.
Hmm.
Don't let go. If you see something, it sounds like a cliche, but say something. And you don't have to have proof. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Just suspicion.
just a suspicion. And that doesn't mean you just go out here and just, you know, report everybody for everything.
No.
But if you have a feeling in your gut that something is wrong, you need to report it
Yes.
because you may be saving a child's life. You may be saving a child's future.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
There's so much youth suicide.
Yeah.
Our Black youth are probably the least likely to commit suicide, but the numbers are rising
Yes.
exponentially.
Hmm.
And all of this starts early.
And then I thought about this issue during the pandemic when everybody was on lockdown and children couldn't really go anywhere in cases. And the answer is yes. Now, in my study on this, I see that when children had to do virtual learning, for instance, teachers had to go through an additional training so that they could ascertain, or see some incidences of neglect and abuse. Okay. So imagine now you're doing virtual teaching and the child is there and you're having to think on another level. The child is not right in front of you, but in this virtual world, you're still required to look for clues about abuse and neglect. Okay. So, um, that training, and you can, in fact, it's available on the website.
Mm-hmm.
The training that you can go through, or you can observe what they're having to look for in a virtual setting. It's you can do it right on Child Family Services Agency website for the DC government. Okay, you can do it, and you can check out that list of mandatory reporters. And in addition, I was just thinking, public housing managers are also mandatory reporters. I think we need, is it break time, Miss Monroe?
I was going to, one more thing before we
Okay.
break. In the state of Maryland,
Mhm.
if you suspect child sexual abuse, everybody is a mandated reporter.
Uh-oh.
Everybody in the state of Maryland, if you suspect child sexual abuse, is a mandatory reporter.
Everybody.
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 Mhm.
Okay. I just want y'all to know Miss Dawn is multilingual, so everybody. Y'all got that. Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back with more of this subject. And we're going to talk about a few well known cases right here in DC. Well, we're back, and we've talked some about abuse and neglect of our children. Now, we had a really horrific case in the District of Columbia a few years back, the Benita Jacks case. And the reason that case is so important, it demonstrates the failure of multiple systems. Okay. And Gwen, what happened in the Benita Jacks case? What happened? And there was failure at several levels. So can you just refresh our recollections?
Okay, Benita Jacks was a mother who lived in our area.
Mhm.
She'd grown up in Charles County, Maryland,
Mhm.
and she dropped out of high school. She had her first child um, when she was 17, and she dropped out of high school then. So the first failure, I think, was education.
Mhm.
Then she didn't really have the support that she needed from her family, and I'm sure that it was a demonstration. Well, I suspect it was a demonstration of tough love.
Mhm.
You know, you and your man are not going to come here. So she, experienced homelessness. So that's a failure as far as family is concerned. Her husband became ill and he died.
And it was her husband.
Right,
I
her
want people to
husband
know that
was her
she was
husband.
married. Okay.
Became ill and she died and he died. They had 4 daughters at the time. And by all reports, there was some existing abuse. And this is reports after the fact, that the young children would be allowed to smoke marijuana and the parents would laugh at them. That there was the denial of food for misbehavior. People knew this, but they didn't report it or didn't talk about it until after the fact. So there was existing abuse all along. Well, when her husband died, there was a breakdown of her mental health. And the way I look at it, the mental health decline is what actually led to murder. She murdered her 4 daughters. The
Yes.
police came to the house. They didn't file a report
Was
when
it a
they were not
welfare
allowed.
check kind of thing?
It was a welfare check. Somebody had reported. She wouldn't let them in. So there's a social services worker who came from the school and insisted time after time after time that something be done, and nothing was ever done.
Now, was that due to absenteeism from the school? Was that
That was the social worker or the person who was assigned to the oldest girl.
I see.
Yeah. And she was relentless in her pursuit of getting some help, but she just was not successful. So the bodies were discovered.
How did they get discovered? What happened?
The federal marshals came to her home to evict her,
Oh, dear.
and she tried not to let them in, and the marshal stuck his foot in the door, which is more effort than a lot of people would have taken, and went into the house and discovered the bodies.
Did she have family local?
She had local family. Some had not seen the children in 2 or 3 years.
Had she received any kind of treatment for her mental health?
None.
And so the marshals discovered the bodies, and I remember when it happened because I didn't live far from her. And I knew something big had happened the route we took going to work. And I saw the yellow, and I knew something major had happened. And when I got to work, I realized that was near my home. And so now she went on trial. What happened?
She refused to plead insanity. She was clearly insane, and it boggles my mind to consider the fact that someone who is clearly insane is allowed to refuse to take an insanity plea.
And this was in the DC Superior Court.
Yes, and her lawyers did protest, but they
Mhm.
didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, one of her lawyers became a judge.
Okay.
So 4 young ladies lost their lives. And let's just take a look at that. As I recall, there was some absenteeism from school.
Yes,
Mhm.
not followed up on,
Not-
except by this one guidance counselor or I'm saying guidance counselor. She was more like a social worker
for the
for the
oldest
oldest
child,
child.
who was a teenager.
Yeah, she was 17.
Yeah. Do you recall whether she went to the neighborhood school like Baloo or?
I don't
Okay.
recall where she went to school.
But I remember, and see, this points out another thing: the failure of our truancy system.
Mhm.
Because now truancy is done by robocall. Now, the children are so brilliant about technology, they can have the phone redirected to their own cell phone, or, I mean,
Or delete the message.
or delete the
Yeah,
message,
sure.
or give just a number
Right.
of things. Okay, see, look, when I want something done, I ask the young people in my family, come on now. And they just come on right with it. I have a little 3-year-old grandniece who's already tech savvy. She can work her own tablet. She can do, what do you call that, FaceTime and all. She's 3 years old. I don't know how to do FaceTime. Okay, I'm just saying. So this case, we had some systems failures, social service failure, education system failure. But here's what I really want to get to, Gwen. We had family system failure.
Mhm.
See, we want to blame the schools and everybody else, but the families did not check on those children.
Right.
When I first heard about the case, I thought those relatives lived in California or wherever. They were all local.
Mhm.
They were all local. So in the end, what was the verdict with Miss Jacks? What
She was sentenced to 120 or 100 and I think 120 or 130 years to be served consecutively.
Wow.
And,
So that means never getting out.
Right. And probably never getting treatment.
Because our penal institutions are not geared toward therapy. They're not therapeutic and they're not rehabilitative. Okay, so there we have it. 4 children who lost their lives, and it appears due to the negligence of several systems. I'm not going to blame.
Preventable.
It was preventable.
Absolutely preventable.
That's the word, preventable. And that's what we're talking about. How do we prevent this from happening? Now, look at the trauma young people are going through now with the violence in the community. Okay, so I'm concerned about children becoming numb,
desensitized to the violence.
Yeah,
right.
Because they see it. Look at the child who was shot, the 8-year-old up there in Brightwood, and now he was a great student, honor student, all of that, doing everything right, and he just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
That's true.
And maybe I'm not even going to say he was at the wrong place. Maybe he was at the right place, and it was just a really bad time. Okay, and I see why Miss George was so upset. She was talking about the young man and how well regarded he was in the community. Now, look at all the children who traumatized by that. Now he's doing well. He was doing well, but now he's been shot. He will be marked by that for the rest of his life. What's in place for him to be treated because he needs some trauma-informed care. You know, uh, this inability to cope with stress was only heightened during the pandemic period. Some children were locked in to their homes. How many times did we hear parents say, I sure wish school would start again? And I'm thinking, children heard that
Right.
remark.
That's lack of personal responsibility
Mhm.
and giving the children the wrong idea about your concern for them.
Yeah, and that I'm a burden, or I'm a nuisance, or I'm just an irritation to you. So now we get into the area of mental health, and when you were doing the cases, did you ever have to refer some of the children to mental health services?
I've had to refer the children and the parents in
Oh.
the same
They-
document, in
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
brief
Yeah.
to mental health services.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And were you successful in getting it?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever have to, because you heard me say I was during the crack epidemic, I remember doing a number of cases there. The parents, sometimes I insisted on the parent being tested.
I never had to do that.
Well, it was almost automatic. I mean, I really hate to say that, but it was during that period, it was just really bad. Okay, It was really bad. So we had to do that. Were you ever involved? We talked about reunification being a goal, but sometimes it's just not possible.
Right.
And many times we don't have relatives who can take that responsibility. Did you run into that issue?
No, I've always had circumstances where the families remain together.
Okay.
There may have been a change in custody, but not a child completely taken away from a family.
Now, you used a term of art there, custody. Okay, so when there was a change of custody, are we talking from one parent to another,
Yes.
or so you're
From
talking
one parent
about
to
one
another.
parent to another.
Yeah.
But look at the children who don't have two parents.
Mhm.
What of them?
A lot of times they wind up in the foster care system.
Mhm.
And of course, there are never enough placements, places where they can go.
Mhm.
Often they're not the ideal situation because, again, personal responsibility, personal accountability. Why are you in it? Is it a business to you, or do you have the empathy
To be a really
be a
good-
foster parent?
Right. I will say this. I was just really blessed. None of the children I represented were placed in, not any of them experienced a bad foster home. One in particular was so successful. It was a little bit funny. She was she was really a good foster mother, so much so that I would go in and sit down and talk with her. And she had raised, over a period of years, I think close to 40 foster children. And she had 4 of her own children. And on her table, coffee table, was this wonderful picture, panoramic view of the um, children, her own children, standing in the middle of all these foster children. And this one picture, I think it may have been taken in Hawaii or somewhere like that, because the biggest fights broke out with the foster children wanting to, I want her to be with us for a certain holiday or whatever, and it was just so wonderful to see that kind of success. So I would want you out there to know, not all foster homes are bad. This lady but she was amusing because she went to a particular church. I won't call the name of the church. And she said, now, Miss Edwards, when I go, everybody goes to church. And one of the little children in her care that I put in her care, this court had her take, he said, Miss Edwards, that service lasted almost 3 hours. And he had come from a background where the
Mhm.
church lasted maybe an
An
hour.
hour, yeah.
But he said, but I had plenty to eat. And he went down the list of
Mhm.
things, because he had been so insecure
Mhm.
in his home. She was a great cook, by the way.
Mhm.
So some people are in it for the right reasons. And then, as you say, some people are in it because it's a business.
Mhm.
I know that's real. I never experienced that, but I know that that is a problem
Mhm.
sometimes. Okay. And our kids, children of color, don't get adopted readily.
Mhm.
So they age out in the system. Now, how does that work? They age out, and I know there is a program at CFSA, Child Family Services, where they try to help the older children get their own jobs, go to school beyond high school, and so forth. And I mean, because they age out of the system. Now, they're technically minors until they're 21. Is that
Mhm.
correct? In DC, until they're 21. It's 18 out here in Maryland. But these kids typically don't get adopted, and that's very sad. I did have a couple of cases that ended in TPRs, termination of parental rights. Okay, termination of parental rights. We love to have reunification, but please understand there are times when it's just not possible. It's not possible. And then I remember a couple of cases where the parent really wanted to terminate
Mhm.
his or her
In
rights
the best interest
in
of
the
their
best
own child.
interest of their own child. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I was happy that they came to that realization that
Mhm.
the child would be better off somewhere else. Now, what we had during that time as well, when I remember having a case where a 13-year-old became pregnant.
Mhm.
Well, when I got her case, uh, the social services department had scheduled an abortion for her on her 13th birthday.
Mhm.
Nobody looked carefully to see this date or whatever. When I got her, she had already gone through that. Well, she became pregnant again.
Mhm.
She was still 13. So I'm looking at a case where her mom was probably about 15 when she was born. I'm looking at 4 generations, and I don't think anybody was 50 years old. Okay? Think about that.
It's still happening.
It's still happening. It's still happening. So we don't have that grandmother who can step in because, the grandmother may be 26, 20, maybe 30 or less. Okay. See, these are the things we're not. Do you hear this on the six? You don't hear this on 6 o'clock news, do you? Mm-mm. You just hear whoa, and no. Until we face it, we can never fix it. We have to face it to fix it, and we have to be honest. And I said it a couple of weeks ago with Miss Rose on her show. There are some mothers who do not want to be mothers. They have the children and then they just don't want to be mothers. Well, what should our approach be with them? Okay, then we should extend to them the other options that are available. And the extended family does not exist as it once did for us. It does not. It does not. And then sometimes families are faced with just not wanting to be bothered with all the things that come with a lifestyle of a certain individual.
That's true.
Did you run
That's
into
true.
that?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that may have been part of this Jack's case,
Yeah, I wondered about
that
that.
they did not want to be associated with her because of how she was living.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have any regard for the fact that the children would be suffering, and did not offer to. And this is more than an assumption that they did not offer to help with the children.
That ended up being an immutable fact.
Yeah.
And we have to face that. I mean, this notion of super mom in our community, everybody's not a super mom, and I just want us to know we have to face the fact that there's some people who don't want their children. Okay, that's a fact. And then let's look at how children are born now. 75% of our children, I think that's the right figure, are born to single mothers. That's about right?
Sounds good.
And so the fathers may or may not be involved in the lives of these children. Okay. So now we have another layer. Okay. Now, can you force someone to be involved? Well, yeah, they financially, yes, but here's what I want us to understand. When we bring children into the world, no child asks to come. That's the first thing. No child asks to come into this world. Once they're here, it's our responsibility to take care of them, to nurture them. That is our job as a parent.
It's our job as a community.
Yeah, and as a community.
As a
yes.
community.
And I'm glad you used that word, Gwen, because when I came along, and I'm sure same for you, I know you're from the city and I'm from a small town. People were interested in children, period. When I walked home from school, if I did something, someone saw it and they said, "Hey, aren't you Edwards?" Yeah. Your parents don't want you to do this. Oh Lord, and back then you would cry just at the thought. I mean, nobody really had to put hands on me, oh Lord, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I mean, I was just really, oh no. And so they would say, "I'm going to tell your parents," Well, my parents didn't cuss them out.
Right. Or say, "Stay out of my business."
Or stay out of my business. They didn't do that. See, we've lost something. And I'm gonna break down the culture here now. See, back in that time, I told you I went to segregated elementary school, and I remember when my brother and I, he's 3 years younger than I am, went to a store, and if there was some little white child having a tantrum, all my parents had to do was look at us and say, "Don't you even think about," they see my mother gave that black woman look, and my father looked like he might put his hand on his belt or something, that signal, silence, just sign language. Okay. And my brother and I knew, don't even go there. You know what I mean? And then we would get next to each other and say, "Oh God, that child's going to get a beating." But that sometimes that parent just was oblivious to, what it was, but we were thinking, they're going to get it, Don't you act up in that store and embarrass me. Okay. I'm just saying, so now I don't know where we are with child rearing styles and that kind of, and the community you're talking about. And that just gave me a flashback because I remember even at church, I couldn't talk. My mother made me go apologize for being disruptive in church. And she said, "If somebody's going to be watching you, to make sure you go apologize." And I'm thinking, who?
God is
watching. God is watching. I did it because I was afraid of the repercussions. Understand? I said something to a child in church. Not at my church, at another church, and the parent attacked me for saying, "Please be quiet," because you see what I mean. So this is a complex situation we're in, and the concept of community. We just came through Kwanzaa, and there are certain concepts and the principles in Kwanzaa about community and togetherness, and they're wonderful concepts, but we're not doing that.
Yeah, we have to embrace it and not just
Mhm.
talk about it.
Right,
That's the difference.
right. Implementation.
Yeah, every child that's born
Mhm.
deserves a chance.
Exactly.
And if you're going to take a preschool child because he's acting out and put him in the category of incorrigible,
Mhm.
as opposed to trying to investigate,
Mhm.
does he have any mental health issues?
Mhm.
Is he emotionally disturbed
Mhm.
already?
Mhm.
What's going on with this child?
Mhm.
You're going to label him.
Mhm.
And, that's the pathway you were talking about, the pipeline
Mhm.
to prison starts young.
Young.
If we don't take notice and do what we can to make a difference.
Well, I'm thinking too about labeling children young,
Mhm.
incorrigible. Just certain coded terms. We don't know what's going on in that child's life.
That's right.
At home, we don't know what's going on there. So instead of saying what's wrong with you, you know, uh, uh, we're supposed to really say something more like what happened to you.
Mhm.
We're supposed to comfort first
Mhm.
and then attempt to treat. First comfort, then treat. Some friends of mine in trauma informed care taught me that we've been asking the wrong questions. We've been accusing the person who's hurting,
Mhm.
and we have to stop that. And then I think the times we live in where everything is warp speed, everything's fast. See, most of the children we're talking about have never been in a world without a microwave, without a
Right.
cell phone, without
Right. Don't know how to read a book in their hands.
right,
Hold a book in their
hold the
hands.
book in the hand. And I think on the way in, I was telling you, one of my cousins told me, he was a school teacher. He said, and it's important for a child to know how to hold a book and read it, not just do everything digital,
Mhm.
not do this all the time, with the thumbs.
Tablets.
And the tablets and all of that, because it has destroyed some levels of creativity. They can't, their imaginations are not as,
Mhm.
So what then, if we can't do the reunification, and we do have to move towards, well, some children do become adopted. They get to be adopted. Thank the Lord for that. And they get into some wonderful homes. And the termination of parental rights is an issue. Yeah, it's an issue. Yeah. And I would like to say this, that we were talking about whether a child's one parent or two parent home. This is why in the weeks coming up, when we talk about custody and that kind of subject matter, know this: if you don't have a custody order, nobody really has custody. Is that right?
That's true.
Okay. And when this usually comes up? When one of the parents might become incapacitated or dies.
Mhm.
I had this happen on a couple of occasions. Go back to that period of time, the drug problem, whatever. The mother was on drugs, died. The father came right to the funeral and took the child. Now, Big Mama was jumping up and down and everything, but there was no custody order.
That's right.
There was no plan.
So regardless of the relationship that the child had with the maternal grandparent, it didn't matter.
No, no. And so forget everything you heard, and this is how we did down in the country. No. You can't even enroll a child in school without a court order showing that you have the authority to do it. It's not like when I was a little girl, grandmothers took you in, or your aunt or somebody. You can't do that anymore, and they would just take you, this is my niece or something. You can't do that anymore. They need paperwork. The school is not even going to allow it. Okay. And it's not the school, it's the law.
Yes.
It's the law. Okay, so we're going to get into many, many things in the coming weeks. with our discussions, and I thought about that when you said the word custody a little while ago. Uh, when there is no custody order, neither parent has custody. And there are two kinds of custody. There's legal custody and physical custody. Okay?
Mhm.
So the parents can both have legal custody, and only one has physical custody. Okay? There's a lot to this. It's not like you can look at TV, and when you look at TV, the paternity court and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Get your popcorn because
Yeah,
that's entertainment.
that's entertainment.
Okay, that's
Definitely
entertainment. Okay, and it's nothing is worked out in 22 minutes and 26 seconds. Those shows are 30 minutes, I think. So with the commercials, it boils down to 22,
Right.
26. Okay, so you can't do that. And you have to get this resolved. And I'll say another thing that has created some abusive situations. When the single mother applies for assistance,
Right.
government assistance, and that kind of thing, the government will go after the young man
Mhm.
to be reimbursed. Am I right about that?
That's true.
Okay. Now, young men, understand this. It's not the young woman coming after you. It's the government getting their money back. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So, we made a deal. It's not
Mhm.
about you and the young lady. You all know I like to
We
get.
had an arrangement.
We had an arrangement. They don't care about that because when you get down there, it's not the young woman coming. The government wants its money back. Okay. Now, when we get into the custody issues a little later, we're going to find out that there are some young men who should consider
Having custody.
having custody of their children. So get out of the mindset that if you're the mom, you're going to automatically get custody. It doesn't work that way anymore. And neither should it work.
Mhm.
It should not work that way. Okay. So I'm just saying that I know that we have a lot to work on. We have a lot. And coming out of this pandemic, we have to do better about how we deal with mental health
Absolutely.
in our community.
Yeah. Do we have time to
Yes,
share
we do.
the
Yes.
the suicide
Please,
hotline?
please. Oh, absolutely. We have to do that because this is all related. Can you all see how it's related out there? Mental health is involved in many of these cases we've been talking about. Okay.
Okay, there's a suicide and crisis hotline. It's only 3 digits, 988. You can call it or you can text it, and your call will be routed to someone who can help you. If you're a veteran, after you dial 988, then dial 1, and they will send you over to services that are designed specifically for military personnel.
And that's important. And we're trying to do much better for our veterans than we have
Right.
done. I think I mentioned just briefly before we took a break, in that mandated reporter list, recently we had that scathing report from housing.
Mhm.
Public housing managers are on that mandated list. You feel me? Public housing managers are on the mandated reporting list. Okay, so I was like, okay, they were very specific on that, and I could see that,
Mhm.
especially when I saw the conditions of many of those public housing
Mhm.
units. Okay, those alone were very stressful to even watch and
Mhm.
look at. Okay, so I can only imagine what's going on the premises there. Okay, but see something, say something, and do something about this situation. We're talking about abused and neglected children.
Mhm.
And here's the other thing: people who, what is it? Hurt people.
Mhm.
It becomes
Right.
a cycle.
Yeah, I got beaten. It didn't hurt me.
Mm-hmm,
You know.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Well, you know what?
mm-hmm,
That was you.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know, you actually did something with your life. These
Mhm.
children are at risk of killing themselves or killing somebody else.
And I look at that inability to cope that we're looking at. Uh, Years ago, juvenile delinquents, as we called them, that was the old term.
Yeah.
Look, they started by stealing something from a store, little
Candy bar.
candy bar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. But now, and I heard Chief Conti and some of the assistant chiefs talk about this, they're going from 0 to 60.
Yeah,
miles
your
an
first crime is a carjacking,
hour. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're 12.
Yeah. So we're talking about, and I think I heard the mayor say consequences. Well, okay, you're starting your third term and you're talking about consequences, suddenly. And this has been growing.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the juvenile crime was twice, I think I heard 2 times from the year before. Okay. All people 15 are not the same.
That's right.
Okay. You can't just say, well, when somebody's 15, we will do this or we won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
What if one 15-year-old has 2 or 3 children? And by the way, I did represent children who had that. I mean, that was their experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right down on that calendar we're talking about. The neglect calendar. Yeah. And what another child is 15 and maybe this is the first, maybe just are in a group and not really doing anything, but at the wrong place at the wrong time. And they get hung up in the system. That happens to children too. So when we're not monitoring children, they can get into things just by happenstance. You can be with the wrong crowd.
Exactly. And it happens.
That's real, isn't it?
And back in the day, I know of a case where the young man was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He went to prison for 5 years. But in the time when he was in prison, he got his college degree. The stuff like that even exists anymore.
Yeah. Well, the rehabilitative programs, we have them on paper, Gwen. They're on paper. How effective they are, don't know. Recidivism, where is it? Yes, there have to be consequences. If somebody 15 kills somebody, they know what a gun does. They have enough exposure from movies and television and whatnot to know what a gun does. Why is it that someone who grows up in a place like I did has a gun cabinet, like you all have china cabinets? We have gun cabinets. I don't know if you all have ever seen them. And they can be on display. Children walk by those cabinets day in and day out, day in and day out. And you don't have the violence that you have here. At one time, the District of Columbia had the strictest gun control law in America and simultaneously had the distinction of being known as the murder capital of America. Now, how does that square? Well, the gun control law is not going to control the level of violence. No, it might help. But people who are going to do bad things are going to find a way to have a weapon. It's not until you pick up the gun and discharge it that it becomes dangerous. I'm sorry. So when people ask me, how do you feel about gun control? I said, well, yes, I believe we should have screening so that mentally ill people cannot purchase them. I believe that. Good vetting. But I do not think our approach has been sound at all. I really don't. I don't think so. And we can't legislate everything away. Good old-fashioned morals and values, we need to revisit them. Yes. And I want to get back on that word community that you spoke about. We lost something. I don't know exactly where it happened, but somewhere we lost that sense of community in what we do. I mean, when you went to school back, you and I are in the same ballpark. You're told, don't embarrass us at school. You don't embarrass your family at school. When you act up, you are embarrassing your family. I mean,
and your name was important.
Your name was important.
Your name was important.
Yeah.
You're a Griffin.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
they knew who I
Yeah.
was. And wait a minute, watch this, people. When you got a spanking at Barnett Elementary School, guess where they took you? To the nurse's office. And guess who was the school nurse? Aunt Maddie. Okay. I didn't want to go in there. Hello. And the other lady was Miss Allen. And she was a friend of one of my other aunts. So see, I was going and remember both of them were members of my church. So let's don't, I didn't want to get in trouble. You're right.
Mhm.
Your name, people knew you.
Mhm.
People knew
And the
you.
truant officer knocked on the door.
Hello, the truant officer at my school, it was Mrs. Roberta Boggs. For us, and she was tall black lady. She was every bit of 6 feet tall in her stocking feet. I didn't want to have any parts with that. You know what I mean? I just wasn't going to go up against that. And I was very blessed. I went to a great elementary school. Um, I'm just grateful. And teachers I didn't even have, I had them in enrichment programs outside the school. I was able to take ballet lessons. One of the teachers, Miss Brown, made sure we had exposure to those kinds of things. Just a whole different mentality. It was a real community. I loved it. I loved it. And so now we need to think about returning to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the increase in the youth suicide is because kids really feel like there's nobody there for them. They're on their social media and somebody's bullying them
Mm-hmm.
on social media,
Mhm.
and they don't feel like there's anything they can do about it. And the parents are totally unaware
I mean, children
of
have
what's even
actually
going on.
committed suicide because of the bullying they received through social media.
Mhm.
The parents are not even aware of the extent to which their children are on social media.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know how that is controlled. Most kids have cell phones now by what, 10?
Yeah, not my grandson.
Okay. Oh, well,
His
we,
mom
we
is
know
on
who
it.
his mom is. We know who his mom is. Yeah. Coming up soon at the end of this month, and I'll talk about it again next week. We're going to have a brunch for fathers over at, I think it's Denny's. Uh, and this is in conjunction with Just Swag TV and Wise Works. I can't say enough good about them. They're just so involved in the community. We're going to have that. And next week, tune in. I told you for these hot topics that we're going to have common law marriage, prenuptial agreements. And next week, we're going to give away 2 tickets to a very important play. Very important play. So I don't know which caller it will be, but we're going to give something away. Now, you want to go somewhere. You want to step out to a wonderful play by I call her Miss Andre. Miss Andre. And so next week, make sure you tune in on time at 2:30. And I don't know where we're going to we're going to maybe one ticket at one time and another ticket at another time. Okay. And she's a remarkable person, just a lovely person, very creative. And then in the end of March, I am blessed to be a part of something called Hope Fest. I was one of the founding members along with Miss Sharon Wise, and Hate Stops With Us. We started that in response to, remember, the Asian hate crime
Yes.
in Atlanta. Right after that, imagine we had the inaugural event at Busboys and Poets in Anacostia, and this will be our third event, and it will be at the Lloyd Smith Center in Marshall Heights. So we're looking forward to that. Now, Gwen, did you have anything else you wanted to mention? Take it away.
Nothing in particular, but I think it's important to know that things really start early and they progress most of the time gradually. By the time someone that's young is in prison, Rehabilitation is important. Mandatory education, mandatory mental health screening. Just don't look at this young child. Well, they were 14 and they did this horrible crime. They murdered somebody. They did this theft. They're horrible people. They started as babies and they went to your schools and were in your community. They are human beings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And none of us have the right to write anyone off. No, we don't have that right. I don't want to hear that. We must try to help, but early intervention is key.
It's very
Is
important.
key. There is a program we will talk about at a later time where rehabilitation is emphasized and vocational training is given to young people who are incarcerated. And it's mandatory. Now, look at all of the young people who don't go to school. You see them in the streets during the day. This is a Midwest program I'm talking about. And the children are required to pursue a specific line of study so that when they leave, they can be employed in meaningful employment. It's mandatory. That's a part of the condition of release.
I think that's great.
And I think it's a great program, because we're not doing that for the children who are not incarcerated.
Right.
Okay. So we are making an effort to bring back vocational education in the district. We're looking at making mental health services. You were at the mental health program we had at the Panorama Room. Yeah. And we're going to talk about it openly. We're going to stop. Look, in the Black community, we have refused to even talk about mental health. Okay. And we've said that, the psychiatrists are anti-religious, we get that mixed up. Oh, no, they just have a demon. Okay. Look, we need to do better about how we approach mental health. I look at, remember the expression, oh, somebody has the baby blues. And then later the person may kill the baby or that kind of thing because it's postpartum depression. We know there's a name for it now. And, we just cannot keep putting our heads in the sands like ostriches. We have to be concerned about mental health.
That's true.
And the stigma that goes with it. Now, it's hard, and I've heard this, and it is true. It's hard enough just to be Black, but to be Black and mentally ill is, that's the rationale about not dealing with it, but we have to deal with it and get the help we need.
Absolutely. And nobody should be left out.
No.
I know there are a lot of people of different sexual orientations, their preference. And while it has nothing to do with me, they are human beings.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they deserve services.
Yes.
And they should not be neglected or left behind.
Exactly. And there's a high incidence of mental health crises in the LGBTQIA community. Yeah. High incidence. And, I've worked with it a long time and I'm concerned. I'm concerned about it. So coming up, we're going to deal with all this mental health, domestic violence, child abuse awareness is coming up in April. June, elder abuse. And that's horrific because now we have elderly who are living in $1 million homes who are being financially exploited.
Right.
So we're going to have many, many good topics. I have enjoyed being here with my good friend Gwen Lewis today. She is just a remarkable person. And you're going to hear some more from her. Okay. You're going to hear more from her. And I'm going to have my friend Miss Rose on, and some other folks are coming in. I'm going to have real estate people coming in and law enforcement because, I did not subscribe to the view of what is it?
Defunding
the police. No. So
Incredible.
anyway, we're going to go over all of that. I thank you for listening and see you next Thursday.
Thank you.